Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show.
If you should awaken, I will be there when you wake from your lovely
Welcome back. Today I would like to start off by making sort of a correction or even almost an apology in case I have offended someone. It's what happened was, or what had happened was, I was at work one day and a teenager drove up and asked me, "Curt, what are you doing?" And I said, I'm working on my audiobook. He said, "Oh, you wrote a book." He said, "What's it about?" And well, without thinking about it very much, I just blurted out, "I rewrote the Old Testament." Now, when I said it, it was like the funniest thing I'd ever heard. The two of us sit there and started dying laughing, right? And so anyway, afterwards I started reading my chapters, and the book was about the beginning of the universe all the way up until Jesus at 13, and it did seem like I had wrote something, along those lines, if nothing else. But I didn't know how much that would offend people. Once I told that to a Christian, they got so mad at me that the anger and the vitriol in their face. One of them, it was two young ladies, and one of them was like a chihuahua, and she was barking, and the other one was like a Rottweiler, and they said they vowed to never read my book because it's nonsense. I said, "You don't even know what it's about. We don't care what it's about. It's nonsense. You wrote the Old Testament, you rewrote. You ain't," basically what they were saying. Of course, I'm not worthy of doing anything like that. And I agree. I'm not. And who is? So today I decided to tell a short story about how all this came to be. I used to be a businessman. I was doing very well, and I got displaced. So make a long story short, here I was having to start over in a new environment. And so I ended up in a place I used to frequent regularly. It was a skating rink called Flippers in West Hollywood. But no longer is it a skating rink, it's now a CVS. And I was working in there as security guard. And I was looking at my phone, and I saw Herbie Hancock talking. And I said, "Well, Herbie Hancock is a musician. What is he talking about?" So I listened to him, and he was talking about Buddhism. And about 30 minutes later, Herbie Hancock came walking into CVS, and I was like, "Wait a minute, I just saw you on your thing, talking about Buddhism." And he said that, "Yeah, I'm on my way to a meeting right now." I said, maybe this is a sign, because I was so displaced and feeling horrible, and I thought about Tina Turner and how she was in her movie, and she did the Nam Myo Rang. So I started looking into this. So by the time I got finished looking at that, I got to looking at something else, and then something else, and then something else. And so what eventually happened, I ended up going for 2 years. I ended up going through about 40 manuscripts. And not only did I read them, but I studied them to see what they were. And then I was working someplace else, and I was talking to an old girlfriend of mine, and she told me that how upset she was with me that I had been doing this before and now I'm doing this. And I'm like, well, it's not so bad, hey, they need security in the world. She said, yeah, well, so what? You don't have to do nothing. I said, well, I have a gun in case I have to. She said, yeah, but you better not use it or you'll go to jail. And I was like, wow, I'm just not about nothing, huh? So later that night, I said to myself, okay, what if I pretend to be an author and I'm doing research for a book? That way, I'll feel better about myself because now I'll be an author who's working on a book. And what I forgot to tell you is that when I had to rediscover myself, I rediscovered also my metaphysical roots from back when I was a teenager. Back then, I used to communicate regularly with something. Did not know what it was, but I hadn't heard that something in a long time. People would call it their inner conscience or whatever, but I just called it a nosy person because this particular voice happened to be all up in my business, chiming in at any time it felt like it and telling me things like, man, you better check this girl you're out with because I don't think she's what you thought she was. But anyway, that's another story I'll tell one day. Turned out to be a very good story. But anyway, so here I was going to pretend to be this author so I would feel better about myself. And then the voice came back after years, and the voice said, yes, you are going to be an author. You are an author. And I said, oh, really? Where you been? And I'm here again, and you're going to be an author. And I'm like, okay, so what am I going to write? And then all of a sudden I started thinking about the last 2 years and all the research I had done. And it scared me. I said, oh no, I'm not going to write that book. And the voice said, yes, you are going to write that book. Me and the voice went back and forth for about 2 weeks. Finally, I just gave in, and I went around telling some of my relatives, I'm about to write this very controversial book, and they were like, I don't know what's going to happen after that, because there might be some people very upset with me. Now, my people are unique, because they was like, go ahead, we want to see what happens to you. They didn't care. They said, we need some excitement around here. I said, but they might want to hurt me. They said, ooh, go ahead and do it. We want to see. I'm like, really? Okay. So anyway, that's why I wrote the book. And so here are some of my research references that I used when I wrote it. First, there was the Dharmapada, Eknath Easonwarren, the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad, the Kabbalah, 3 initials, Emerald Tablets of Thoth, Durrell, the Holy Bible, King James, William Tyndale, editor, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Essenes, the Vedas, ancient India, the Sumerian tablets, Zechariah Sitchin, the Book of Enoch, Mashafa Henoch, the Epic of Gilgamesh, ancient Mesopotamia, the Bhagavad Gita, Epoch Imbarata, the Torah, the Hebrew Bible, the embedded Veda text, Hinduism. the Buddha, Seldana, Deepak Chopra, author, quantum theory, Albert Einstein, quantum theory, Niels Bohr, holographic universe, Michael Talbert, Bible Owaspi, Cosman. Neil deGrasse Tyson, planetary science, Lord Krishna, Hindu, Enuma Elish, pyramid texts, Billy Carson, author, lecturer, ancient historian, Stephen Hawkins, theoretical physicist, Lament to Asclepius, Corpus Hermeticum. Now, what I was able to do was I was able to find the essence of each one of these individuals and their writing, fit them into a narrative where it all worked together. There are parallels between Krishna and Hermes, for instance. There are parallels between Jesus and once you start to work out these parallels diametrically and time-wise, they tend to fit into a very wonderful narrative. In that narrative is where my book derived. And to be perfectly honest, the individuals who were given the gift and responsible for writing the Bible, in my humble opinion, they should have did it the way I did it. Maybe there wouldn't be 10,000 religions in the world. Maybe there would only be 200. At least mine is a coordinated effort. Anyway, let's move on to the chapter for today. It's chapter 37, and I hope you enjoy it. See you when you get back.
Chapter 37, The Missing Link. With no one the wiser, 9 months later, a female child was born to the family of Jeb and Nut. She was named after the celestial goddess Isis, and from the moment of her birth, she was regarded as the most beautiful child ever born. So aesthetically magnificent was this child, as the first noticed wonder was the perfectly formed forehead and the separation between the eyebrows. All others of her kind had the similar appearance of the predecessor to the evolved human, the Homo Sapien. Isis was the first Homo Sapien Sapien, Sapien meaning wise man. The kingdom was waiting for the prophetic child to someday appear, a child that would lead humanity to its next stage of evolution. They had no idea that Isis was in fact half Atlantean after Nut's night with Thoth. Isis herself was never made aware of this. As a child, Isis was paraded throughout Egypt as the future of the empire. All were in amazement of the wonder child of Lower Egypt. In time, word was spread across rivers and oceans. She not only possessed beauty, but was also considered to have an extraordinary mind, perceived to be far more advanced than others. Not only was the word Genesis derived from the genes of Isis, but so too was the word genius. She would ultimately be given the title of Earth Mother Goddess. Her true father, Thoth, could only stand by in proud amazement. He would become teary-eyed at the sight of her. Even the sight of her mother Nut would cause Thoth great anxiety, holding in the knowledge of her origin. So too was the excitement expressed by the Anunnaki upon the news of her appearance. They immediately expressed interest in her as her genetics would become the primer they were seeking to make whole their creation of the new humans. The Anunnaki had never crossbred a Homo sapien and an Atlantean, nor would an Atlantean allow them to, even if it was an attempt to balance and make whole the breed. To this day, science has yet to discover the missing link. So now, in these pages, you have it. With the help of Thoth and the Anunnaki, they were able to gather millions of eggs from the womb of Isis as soon as she matured, as Thoth was his secret daughter's primary gynecologist and never revealed his role in the matter. They were then able to disperse genes of Isis by way of adoption throughout Greater Africa by way of Egypt. This would become a missionary campaign to unify humankind, as Isis became the ancestral mother of all humans. All humans are now connected genealogically by the genes of Isis. In addition to the Anunnaki's desire to spread the genes of Isis, so too did the family of Isis. They specialized in the art of selective breeding their cattle and sheep to create hybrids of stronger and larger animals. The family made structured attempts to selectively breed offspring of the offspring of Isis. Breeding campaigns using midwives and careful selection was taken quite seriously. It was an effort not only to create the beauty that was a creation in the first version of man's creation by way of Anunnaki rib and DNA, but to create a far more intellectual, genius race of mankind as well. As Isis matured, Thoth became her mentor. She had little clue that the man that was teaching her most was actually her father. Thoth would become so proud of Isis. Every bit of knowledge she was exposed to, she consumed. Every game she played, she outplayed. Talent and wisdom of a goddess and the brains of her true father. As children, Osiris, whose grandfather was Marduk, and was also named after the celestial god of the star Sirius. Osiris and Isis were almost inseparable. Everywhere she went, her big brother was sure to be by her side. With extreme malcontent, the younger brother Set, also grandson of Marduk, would attempt to insert himself in as many affairs of his magnificent sister as possible. Even as a child, Set knew that by his brother's dead body was the only chance to gain the hand of his beloved human sister, Isis. If Set could not have Isis, he would be relegated to betrothed Nephthys. The animosity between the two brothers grew and grew. Isis was paralyzed in this situation, for she had much love for both Osiris and Set. Between her years of 12 and 20, Isis was seen by Thoth, her gynecologist, regularly. She had agreed to give of her eggs generously. This was an effort to become the mother of all human civilization. Little did she know that her eggs were in fact being traded on what could be considered the first stock exchange program in history. Every first Friday of the calendar month, the phoenix would rise unto Egypt with the express purpose of collecting the seeds to be entered into the medical banks called genes of Isis. The genes were then organized and shipped to facilities with the expertise to utilize them. As offspring came to be, there was Osiris and Isis to be congratulated for her involvement. All this while Thoth remained silent. There were several facilities in Africa and the Middle East alone, each one adding slight changes to the structure of the DNA. The offsprings of the crossbreeds were then organized into tribes. The offspring entering into the tribes were also given into their DNA a variable gene. This gene would enable the tribe to adapt to their environment that they would eventually migrate and settle into. For example, layers of hair would remain on tribe members in colder climates, as well as eyelids that could shield eyes from the bright sun. The African Pygmy tribe of the Congo Basin seemed to be suited for duties that required less size than others. Anunnaki, being of grayish skin tone, would input a natural form of sunblock called melanin into dark brown to black pigmented skin and irises of the eyes in people and animal, thus responsible for the tanning of skin exposed to sunlight. As these tribes ventured out of Africa and on to the far corners of the world, they were not only equipped with the genetics necessary to adapt to a variety of climates, but also their newly acquired eyebrow separation, thanks to Thoth the Atlantean himself, though he at no time would admit this. They began to migrate from the African continent and to populate parts of Europe and Asia. They reached the Australian continent in canoes, then ships shortly after the gene splicing had begun. It was the hope of the Anunnaki to spread the population to the far corners of the world, that they would create more distinctive groups in an effort to measure the growth and progress of man.
Subscribe and push the like button.
Welcome back and thank you for coming. There's a lot of show left. Please subscribe and press the like button. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for listening. See you next time.
Imagine you had a twin, a very, very special twin, that knew everything about you. But this twin was not from this place. She was from the ethereal realm where the angels come from, where there's no such thing as time, where the past, present, and future are the same. She leaves your body when you are asleep, returning gently, loving and caring, entangled and linked by a cord of silver. One day you will transition, yet your twin will keep right on living. Because it is true, for you are her avatar, and that soul is you. Is you. Is you. Forever sweet be your dreams.
Subscribe and push the like button.